Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women's Fiction Writers Association December 2022 webinar. Woohoo! So we are ending the year on a wonderfully positive high note. Tonight, we will be talking to three fantastic published authors, and our topic tonight is publishing at any age. It's never too late. So love that title because it's very inspiring for all of us, regardless of age. Before I go ahead and introduce our fabulous presenters, I'm going to ask you to do a few things. And one is to look down at the Zoom menu and you'll see the chat, and some of you are already using it. And you can select under chat everyone in the little blue box instead of hosts and panelists. And that way everyone can see your comments. If you ever want to just go ahead and message me directly, you can either pick up my name, which is Lisa Montanaro, or you can click hosts and panelists and it would go to me and the presenters. And that would be for if there's a technology issue or something like that. Use the chat for chit chat to maybe tell some resources. Somebody might mention something and to connect with other members for sure. If you have an official Q&A, an official question, if you could go over on the menu to where it says Q&A and put it there, I would really be grateful. And the reason is that, you know, chat is sometimes very interactive and will fly by in a good way. And the Q&A stays preserved throughout the entire evening, throughout the webinar. And that way I can make sure to get to your wonderful questions. And we do want this to be interactive. So even though this is a dialogue between the four of us, between Grace, Barbara, Linda, and myself, we also want it to be a dialogue with you. So even though we can't see your beautiful faces, we know you're there, so feel free to ask questions. Other than that, I think if you need captions, we have a wonderful feature, whether you're hearing impaired or you just have a lot of distractions or you're the type that just likes to read along for clarification, you can hit on the bottom where it says show captions and you will see that it has closed captions on the bottom. So we love that addition. Other than that, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. My name is Lisa Montanaro. I am the webinar program leader and host for WFWA since the spring of 2019. And let me tell you what I love about this role. I get a front row seat to all this fantasticness. So I get a front row seat to all of the professional development that we have with craft, business, marketing, and community. So those are our tracks. We have craft, business, marketing, and community. And those are also the tracks that you'll see next year in Chicago at the conference. So what I'm going to go do now is introduce you. We're really lucky tonight because we have fantastic presenters who are published authors and who happen to be our own members, which I love because I think that's an extra bonus. So I'm going to start with Linda Rosen, and everyone named themselves so you can see their names. Linda, can you say hi?
Hello, everybody from Florida, where it's nice and warm today.
Yeah. Linda is a snowbird, so she spends part of the year in New Jersey and part of the year in Florida. And right now she's in Florida because New Jersey is, as we heard from someone, cold.
Right.
Yeah. So she lives in New Jersey, and then when the leaves start to fall, she heads down to Florida, where she then makes us very jealous because she talks about going swimming in the pool, which I love. Right. So she swaps shoes for sandals, and you know, also enjoys her life down there playing pickleball and swimming. So she has a really cool background as a fitness professional. For those of you that may know her, you'll have seen that in her blog and in her books. You might see that the character is a fitness pro, which I always think is really cool. Linda has two books out now. The first one is The Disharmony of Silence, and the second one is Sisters of the Vine. I've read them both and they're phenomenal, if I do say so myself. And she is a member of WFWA, and she's a very active member of the Women's National Book Association, where she coordinates the Great Group Reads Committee and is the founder of the Southern Florida chapter, which I think is really cool. She's also a founding member of the Author Talk Network, which is, I'm trying to think, a really cool group that I think two of you are in, maybe three of you?
All of us. Grace started it. Grace started it. She can tell you everything about it.
Okay, good. And you are also an administrator of the Facebook group, which I love, which all of you are in and coordinate and run, and it's called the Bookish Road Trip. So if y'all love travel and reading, you got to check it out. And then she's also the editor of the newsletter for Bookish Road Trip called Wanderlust, which I love. You can follow Linda at linda.rosen.com. Yay! So welcome, Linda. Let me keep going. Next, we have Barbara Conrey. Barbara, can you say hello to everyone for me, please?
Hello.
Yay. And Barbara is the USA Today bestseller, author of Nowhere Near Goodbye, which was her debut, which was phenomenal. Also read that one. And it was published in 2020 by Red Adept Publishing. She is represented by the Liza Royce Agency. And her sophomore novel, My Secret to Keep, which is waiting for me on my Kindle, was released in 2022 this year. Barbara is also an active member of WFWA and the Women's National Book Association and the Author Talk Network and Bookish Road Trip. And she moderates on Bookish Road Trip. Travel is her passion, along with reading, her beloved beagles, and lots of other things like writing and hiking and exploring antique shops. Her greatest love is Miss Molly, her rescue beagle, and she lives in Pennsylvania, and you can learn more about her at barbaraconrayauthor.com. And last but certainly not least is Grace Sammon. Grace, can you say hello to everyone?
Hi, everyone. It is great to see people that I recognize in the chat and some people from Venice, Florida. You should just be sitting right next to me. I'm in Sarasota, so it's great. Thanks for having us tonight.
So Grace is an entrepreneur, an educator, a speaker, and an author. And she has started and managed 2 for-profit and 2 not-for-profit organizations, which I love. She's traveled to 35 states and 8 foreign countries, hence starting the Bookish Road Trip group, which has really taken off and is a wonderfully supportive community. She's recognized in the who's who of education and in the who's who of literature. And she has built up decades and decades of reinventing herself, which I love. Her book, The Eves, I think just got recognized like literally in the last week, if I'm not mistaken. Didn't it? Didn't it win something or get some recognition like the other day?
Well, 2 things. First of all, I did not start Bookish Road Trip. That was 4 amazing other women for which we have now, the 3 of us have also joined forces. And it's, Facebook is a funny place. I was recognized as an outstanding women's fiction. And for some reason, it popped it back into somebody's queue this week. And now it keeps on magically growing all over this.
Oh, so that's what happened. Okay, well, you still were recognized for that, even though it got a new bump. So yeah, yes. And thank you for correcting me. I actually didn't know that 4 other fabulous women started it and that you 3 have joined it. So that's a good correction, I think, because I don't want to, take that credit away from the fantastic people that created it. So Grace's novel is The Eves. And if any of you have ever listened to her podcast interview with Maggie Smith, I loved it because you learned a lot about the book, which again is sitting on my Kindle, but haven't read yet. I apologize. There's so many good books to get to. So I'm really looking forward to that. It is an intergenerational story about lives lived well and lives in transition. Oh, I love that. She brings a quest for good story and a drive to her radio show, The Storytellers, and it is broadcast on Air Global Radio Network. She's also the host of Launchpad, which is another radio show, which I love, that celebrates book releases and the authors that create them. You can read a lot more. I'm trying to look. There's so many wonderful things that Grace is doing, and you can read all of them at gracesammon.net, not .com. And she grew up on Long Island, and I went to college on Long Island, so I'm going to say it the right way, Long Island, and spent most of her life in the DC area, and now she currently lives in Florida near Sarasota with a small herd of imaginary llamas. I love that. That's adorable. Woo! All right, first of all, let's give you a hand. All of it. Yay. I'm going to start us off tonight by doing a quick round robin and asking the 3 of you to tell us how many books you have out, when they were published, and if you have a book coming up. So Linda, if I could start with you, that would be great.
Absolutely. I have 2 books out, like you mentioned before. My debut, The Disharmony of Silence, came out in 2020, 1 week before COVID locked the world down. My second book came out a year later. I don't want people thinking that I write that quickly. It took 10 years to do both. And I was like writing both at the same time, taking different breaks. And my 3rd book, which still is surreal to me, is coming out in May, this coming May 2023. And characters for book 4 are already talking to me.
Awesome.
Oh, and I didn't say, in 2020, when my first book came out, I was 72.
Okay, good. Thank you. So that's a great example of 2 things, which I think is fascinating. One is, I appreciate that you said how long it took to write both those books, because so many people, including me, are taking a long time to write their debut. And it's nice to know that we're in good company, and that many people take a long time to write their first book. And also to know that you debuted at 72, and you were in very good company, not only with a lot of wonderful WFWA members, but with some very well-known, famous authors like Delia Owens of, oh my God, I love that book. What's it called? Where the Crawdads Sing. So good example. Awesome. Good. Barbara, how about you? How many books do you have out? Do you have any new ones coming out? And when did you publish? What year?
Okay, I also published in 2020 in August, and COVID was still rampaging through the country, the world. And I was 70 when Nowhere Near Goodbye published my debut. I was 71 when it became a USA Today bestseller. My second book released this August. And they say that August is like the worst month of the year to release a book. And yet both my books have released in August. So I don't know what to say about that. I don't seem to have had a problem with releasing in August.
That's good for people to hear again, that, there are all these rules that you hear, and yet there's someone successfully breaking.
Exactly. And nothing is set in stone.
Yeah.
It took me 6 years to write my first book. The first 3 years, I didn't know what I was doing, and I did it very poorly. I had no idea how to write a book. I finally, I joined WFWA. I took a lot of courses. I bought a lot of craft books. I have met so many authors in WFWA who were so extremely helpful. And after I learned what I was doing, it probably took me another 3 years to write and publish the book. My second book took about 1.5 years. But it's been a joyous journey. I have been blessed. It's the thing.
Oh, okay, you're back. There was a weird, there was a weird audio blip, but it sounds. Say something for me again. I think you're okay.
Am I okay?
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we just had a little interference, but yeah. Awesome. And then are you working on your next book, and when do you think it might be released?
Yes, I am working on my third book, which is, I guess I'm hitting 76,000 words at this point, and I am anticipating, with the way the publishing world goes, that it will release in 2024.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And Grace, how about you?
I'm so inspired by the two of them, but I published my first book. I have 4 books out. My first 3, however, in the area of education. I was an educational consultant forever. So my first book, 22 years ago, maybe. I've been traditionally published and independently published, and then I published my first novel just around the same time everybody else did. It was June of 2020. And I've got 3 books coming out in the spring, which are collaborations with other authors. They're anthologies, which are built around our Launchpad radio show. It's a way to help authors jumpstart a lot of their work.
Awesome.
And I'm 69 now.
And you're 69 now. So in 2020, you were just shy of that. Right. Awesome. Okay. Well, few other questions that I have for you, but before I forget, so I'm going to chime in here, and the reason is, I think what's interesting is Barbara and Linda, if I'm not mistaken, these were your debut novels, but they were also your first books ever published. So you weren't published in nonfiction. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And
it was,
so, Grace, how long before your debut novel was your nonfiction published? I'm curious.
Oh, 20 years.
20 years.
So I had 3 books that came out. My first book I wrote in 6 months, and I wish I could do that again.
Right.
That'll never happen again in my lifetime. But my first book came out 22 years ago, so 20 years between my first debut and my novel. And just like Linda and Barbara said, my novel took me forever to write. So that's why I'm particularly impressed with both Linda and Barbara, that, you know, my book's been out for 2 years, and although I'm writing constantly, another novel hasn't birthed itself yet. So I'm
Okay, yeah.
super impressed by them.
But she has 2 radio shows that came out in that 2 years.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, she's
Just saying.
I was gonna say, she's a content creator.
No
Yeah.
slouch.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I said she's no slouch.
No.
Yes.
Well, and also, I'm actually glad you said that, Barbara, because we do have to be careful. I know that sometimes you'll hear people say in other industries that don't understand publishing, it took you how long to write your book? And yet if you say that to a writer, they go, okay.
Yeah,
Because
right.
they
right.
understand the unique, as you said, birthing experience of bringing out a book. I was published in nonfiction in 2011. So I'm a productivity consultant by trade. And my first book came out in 2011. And I have now been working on my debut novel for 6 years, and I am now finally querying. So, and I am 54. So my goal is next year, I'm turning 55 in January, and my goal next year is to debut at 55 with a novel, not with a book, but with a novel. So, yep, never, yeah. Do me a favor, some of you are already asking great questions. If you could put them in the Q&A, I see some of you in the Q&A and some of you in the chat. If like Linda, I think, asked a question, if you can move that over to Q&A, that'd be awesome, because I want to preserve these great questions. So another quick question, if we could do a round robin, is how are you published as a novelist? So are you published traditional? And in traditional, is it Big 5? Is it small press? Are you agented? Did you go hybrid? Self-publishing, etc. So Linda, if you could let us know, that would be great, because I think people are very interested.
Yeah, I am traditionally published with a small press, Black Rose Writing. If I could just take another minute, because of age, it had to do with a lot why I went with a small press. Small presses publish much more quickly, and I didn't have to go the agent route, which takes forever.
Right.
So,
and actually, I'm glad you said that, because I was going to ask, did age in any way, and again, it's very subjective, because somebody might be 30 and feel like they have an impatient, they're impatient.
Right.
But did age play into it? And your answer was yes. Your decision, part of that impacted was because of age, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. I didn't want to wait a year or two to possibly get an agent, and then another year or two for her to possibly sell it, and then another year or two for them, if it's sold, to then publish it. Small press, there are many you need agents for. Mine, you don't need an agent for, and a small press works much faster than the big houses.
Yeah. Okay. How long did it take, Linda, for your book to come out? Do you remember? Like from when you sent it in, when it got approved and you got your contract, to when it actually published? Was it under a year? I'm trying to remember, because I was with you.
Oh, it's definitely under a year.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you exactly, but it was under a year.
Yeah. Huge difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
Barbara, how about you? How are you? I know how you publish, but can you let everyone know how you're published, please? Oh, and they asked which small press, and it was Black Rose Writing, correct?
Yes. Yes.
So Portia, it's Black Rose Writing for Linda. And for Barbara, it is?
It is Red Adept Press, which is also a small press. I had much of the same feelings that Linda did because of my age. I didn't want to have a middleman, considering the agent being the middleman. And I didn't even consider an agent. And then someone had mentioned my name to my now agent, and she asked me to contact her, and she signed me on. And this was after I hit USA Today. And so now I do have an agent, and there have been more opportunities for me because of that. But I agree with Linda, at our age, the smartest thing that we thought to do was to just get the book out there, and so that's what we did. And so it's interesting, and I always kind of allude to this. I seem to have done everything not necessarily correct in the way that I've maybe worked through my publishing career, but I've always, it's like there must be like an angel on my shoulder because things have always worked out well. I don't know why, but I've been very lucky. I have been very fortunate and very lucky, and I tell people that all the time, because this is not an easy business. It is not easy. There are things that can just be bone crushingly hard.
Yeah.
But then there are also joys that are just wonderful.
Yeah. And you are published, both of your books, the first two are with Red Adept. Is your third book that's coming out in contract with Red Adept also?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Much to my publisher's dismay.
Okay.
She actually contacted me, which I just thought was the most generous thing that she has done, which is she called me and she said, I just want you to know, because there is no keeping a secret that I have an agent.
Right.
I just want you to know I was really sad when you signed with your agent, but I really think it was the best decision for you.
Wow, that's really generous. Yeah.
I was very pleased. So
Can
yes,
you say-
we are hoping to publish it maybe in a medium
Okay.
size house.
Okay, so you haven't submitted.
It just depends, it's like it's like anything. It just depends on what they're looking for at that particular moment. I would have no problem publishing my third book with Red Adept. They've been very good to me. They're a good press. They have grown immensely.
Yes, they really have.
Since I signed with them, which is going on, I guess, 5-6 years now. 2019. I guess it was only 2019. Yeah, that's amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's only been 3 years, right?
Yeah. So
So what's interesting is you're actually going on submission for your third book, and you're then going to have that experience for your third book. And it goes to show that people are doing such interesting, I shouldn't say people, authors are doing such interesting things these days, where there's no longer this straight path.
no.
There's no longer this one way of doing it. And you're
No.
an example of that. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's good to be open to that. It's good
Right.
to know that a lot of us have taken circuitous paths to get to where we are. And I think it's different, than it was even 20-30 years ago. I mean,
Okay.
yeah. So you take the path that will work for you,
Right.
I think.
And then Grace, can you tell them how you published The Eves?
I can, but it's a very circuitous route, as Barbara said. My first book, which I wrote so quickly, I needed right away for work. So I literally went to a Kinko's where, now there is no more Kinko's. And it did so well that I decided to do it with a traditional press. And I sent out, and again, fiction, nonfiction. I know this is a fiction writers group, but fiction and nonfiction are such different animals. I sent it out to 14 presses, and I got 11 yeses right away. So that was my norm. So my book 2 and 3 were originally published by Corwin Press, a very well-known educational press. So when I finished The Eves, I just assumed the same thing was going to happen. So I sent it out to multiple agents, and lo and behold, it did not happen. So to echo what both Linda and Barbara said, I had a great sense of urgency of wanting it out. So I worked with a hybrid press called Writing Nights, and I'll put it in the chat because of the spelling of it. But I worked with Chad Robertson, who asked me lots of questions, including the most important one, which is, why do you want to get this published? So it's an independent press, but because he has a certain set of standards, we refer to it more often as a hybrid press.
Okay, that's great. And I'm looking, we already have a bunch of questions. So one of them you already answered. So somebody asked how you're published. Somebody asked for the name of the press, again for Linda. Grace, if you would definitely put it in there for them in the chat. Oh, awesome. I see it in there. Thank you so much. And so what I love is that you're seeing different, they all went with a smallish press compared to, let's say, a big 5. Barbara has an agent after her first book, again, which is sort of unique. So you're seeing like lots of different reps. Also, Grace, if you can put in the chat how they can find the Launchpad radio show, that would be great. My nonfiction book was published in 2011 with a small press, and I will tell you that, you know, kind of like Barbara feels, I feel lucky because I had been blogging about organizing, productivity, life-work balance, and I got a phone call on my answer machine back in like 2010. And it's like, hi, this is so-and-so editor, we've been following your blog, and we'd like to know if you would be interested in getting an advance to write a book. I thought it was a spam. And I'm laughing because, you know, I don't know if that would happen nowadays, right? And I called my sister-in-law who worked for 30 years for Random House, and she said, nope, that's real. I know that publisher, I know that editor. And so that's what I did. I called them back and said, let's negotiate. And I'm an attorney, and the owner of the small press was an attorney. I negotiated my own contract, took a few months off of work, wrote the book, and then it was carried by, you know, Indigo, Barnes & Noble, Hudson Books, and I will have to tell y'all, I had no idea how lucky I was. No idea. So I think nonfiction is very different, and that was 2011. We're talking 11 years ago. So the journey of now writing a novel and learning how to query, it's such a different ballgame. So for those of you out there that are either have written nonfiction or published a nonfiction, like us, you probably know that it is so different from the fiction world. I'm not saying it's easy, it's just different, you know, it's just different, yeah. And
Lisa, I wanted to bring something up because it kind of goes with all of this. When we're with a small press, because when you just mentioned something about advance with that book that you wrote, I can't say every single one, but I think 99.9% of small presses do not give an advance. Yeah. So people have to understand that, but that the royalties are higher.
Yep, that's a really great distinction, and a few of our questions get into that, that type of thing. But I think that's a great distinction that these days the advances are much smaller in general, and for small presses they're often 0, but your royalties are higher, much higher often.
And Barb also mentioned how Red Adept has changed since she signed. I find the same thing with Black Rose Writing. They have grown tremendously. So if anybody out there is looking at small presses, they should, if they want to know more about the press, because I get questions from people all the time, ask people who are with the press presently. Don't ask somebody who was with them a while back.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so many great questions. All right, so let's dive in. What book has helped you legal-wise with all of the legalities of how to go through the first steps of negotiating life as a writer from a business side? Now, of course, I love this question as a writer coach that focuses on like business and branding, and who's a lawyer. But did any of you tap into any resources, whether they were websites, books? Someone like I can think of a WFWA member, Matt Knight. If none of you are following him, you should. So it's Knight, K-N-I. He has what's called Sidebar Saturdays. And I'm trying to look at who asked that question. T asked the question. I would first get on Matt Knight's Sidebar Saturdays. He's a lawyer and an entertainment lawyer, because that's specifically what you want. And I believe he does have a book, but we also have a webinar. So we had a webinar presenter in the last year and a half, and that webinar presenter presented all about legalities, and she was excellent, and she published a book on the legal issues of being an author. So I apologize that I can't remember her name. She was phenomenal. So T, you might want to check out the webinar archives, and one of the many advantages of being a WFWA member is that you have access to all of the replays. So go into the replays and look, and you'll see that. And also follow Matt Knight, and also because he's one of our members, which is great. Yeah. Another question someone said, do you think that your age may have, or does it make it harder to gain interest from publishers and agents? First question. Second question I'm going to hold off on because it's a two-part, and the second one is very different. Yeah. So first thing, do you think that your age may have or does make it harder to gain interest from publishers, presses, and agents? Anyone?
I'll jump in on that one. Because I always wondered about that. Like, they don't know how old I am. No, when you submit, nobody asks your age. So they never asked my age. I found that when I did go through the query route with my first book, whether it was my age or because my characters were older, and the agents, interns mostly would be reading the query letters, I had a sense that maybe I was asked for partials and asked for fulls, and then got the no thank yous, and then got the no responses, the whole gamut. But I thought that might have had something to do with it, because if I was, and it really doesn't matter if I'm writing older characters, I could be 30 years old writing older characters, but I had the feeling that the young interns were not interested in an older character.
Yeah.
So,
and so,
but I haven't felt any of that with my press at all.
Okay.
They don't know how old I am anyway.
And I think what Linda is talking about is right on. And I think if there's a hesitancy I would have is, we all know that, you should have your second book ready to go or in process as your first book comes out the door. And for those of us who are writing a first novel in their 60s and 70s, we probably don't have that by and large. Some people do, some people don't, but that's something to consider. I think that it makes you more attractive to an agent and a publisher if you can say, here's the one that I'm querying, and I've got one right behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. I also
Barbara, of course, can't speak to that because she has an agent.
Well, but she didn't start with one when she first, when she first submitted.
Exactly. I didn't start with one, and my agent has an interesting approach to the whole age aspect. And now, touching on what Linda said, in my first book, my characters were not an older, they were in their 30s and 40s, and there was a child, and so they weren't older. Linda's characters aren't old. I love the way she puts it, of a certain age, I think. But long after I signed my contract with my agent, and we were talking on the phone one day, and she said, so how old are you? And I said, and this was, I guess I was 71 or 72. And she said, okay. She said, you look great. I would never would have guessed that you were that old. And she says, you don't need to really say how old you are, but everybody knows you're not 40, but I tell people all the time, because I'm not ashamed to say, actually, I'm kind of proud to say,
Yep, good.
I'm 73, and this is what I'm doing. And I work hard, and as we all do. So I'm kind of proud of it. It's like,
I think that's awesome. And Jane Campbell just came out with a great article. If any of you after this webinar want to Google it, put in JaneCampbellSlate.com, and the title was, she's 80 years old, she's furious, and she just published her first book. And she said, Jane Campbell on why more angry, sexy old ladies are exactly what the publishing industry needs. It's a great article and it's well done. And what I love about it as someone that does branding is, just like you said, Barbara, she's proud of it and she owns it. And
Yeah.
she
Well,
said it's part of her unique selling proposition that, you know, it's never too late. You always have stories in you. You use your wisdom. So I think that you and her are similar.
Well,
Yeah.
and you have to have a history. You know, if you don't have a history, what do you have to draw from in your writing? Really,
Absolutely.
you know, and I just think, you know, that that's really important, that you can pull from your own experiences, you can pull from the lives around you. It's like, if you're 20 years old, you don't have a whole lot of history there to work with. The other thing is, we're not taking care of small children. We're not worried about getting pregnant, God forbid. You know, we've
I
got,
think you'd make a lot of money if you got pregnant.
yeah, maybe a lot of money, a really lot of money.
Well, actually, that I do want to get into that in a minute in terms of, did you start writing when you were still, let's say, working in another career or taking care of a family? Did you wait until you got retired? But before we do that, someone put a great resource in the chat, and you're right, Jane Friedman has a great book on the business side of writing, and she was our masterclass presenter at the Virginia WFWA conference. I was focusing on the legal side of that question, but you're right, she's phenomenal. So again, janefriedman.com, great blog. I would do that for business and then Matt Knight for legal. So thanks, whoever said that up there. Another question I do want to get into is quickly, did you start writing after you retired, after you had a family, after you had a career? Is this like once it became your full-time gig, or were you juggling other things? And just because I think, again, we make some assumptions that someone of a certain age might not work or might not have responsibilities or family, but people have responsibilities and work sometimes regardless of their age, and sometimes they're very young and they don't have responsibilities or work. So when did you start?
I'll jump in on that one. And I think that it has something to do with discipline as well. When I wrote my first 3 books, I was traveling 200 days a year, and I was writing in airport lounges and on the back of napkins on airlines. And I just had that whole discipline of writing. And then when I wrote The Eves, it really was to figure out, how do I transition from that kind of work level to a different type of work? And I wasn't as disciplined. And now I find that I've had to switch back into that, you know, I do this, I need a schedule in order to write more efficiently. And I love some of the comments in the chat too. So thank you for all of your kind comments that are coming up to us all on the chat as well.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying that they're finding this very inspirational, and they love all of your authenticity, because not everyone is as open to talking about some of these things in the industry. Like someone said, Linda, your comment about like the young assistants maybe not connecting and getting it. And there's 2 issues there. There's, will they connect with the author of a certain age, and will they connect with the character of a certain age? So 2 different things. And then if you're an author of a certain age, writing a character of a second age, of a certain age, right? Then you got both of those, you know. So yeah. Linda and Barbara, do you want to comment on the, like, when did you start writing? Were you retired? Did you have work or family issues, etc.? You don't have to.
I didn't start writing until after I retired. I didn't start writing seriously.
Okay.
I've always had the need to write, and I would write little editorial opinion kind of things for the local newspaper. And even when I was a kid, like, I would write little things just for me. And I was always telling stories, like I was always telling my friends stories. And I always wanted to write, but I worked all of my adult life, and I so admire authors who are raising children and working full time,
Yeah.
and writing really, really, really good books.
And sometimes a lot of books in succession. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know. I literally retired when I was 64. And the very next day, I sat down at my desk and started writing.
Good for you. That's amazing.
I write 7 days a week unless I'm traveling, or by traveling, I mean on vacation, because I don't have a full-time job. When I retired, except now I work harder than I ever did.
And
but-
now you're doing it for you as a
Well,
passion.
yes, and it makes a world of difference. But I'm very scheduled in my writing. I write every single morning, and it's like I just feel like something is wrong if I can't sit down and do my writing first. You know, I just sort of like I'm kind of like not calm. I'm just like I
Not centered.
have my stuff together if I haven't had my opportunity to spend a few hours writing.
I love that. Grace, I'm sorry, pardon me, Linda, before you answer this question, I just want to mention that Dee put in the comments that she just got back from the Kauai Writers Conference in Hawaii. And the demographic of attendees was US older women who were serious about writing. But between sessions and at lunches and bars, editors, agents, and publishers all admitted to ageism. So so I want to warn the industry, we older women who maybe don't have a long range career ahead of us are writing good stuff. And I think we are rising up. Dee, I think that's the theme now. We are rising up.
I love that.
So we just need someone to start singing. We need, you know, like, this girl is on fire. Yeah, right. All right, not US, but us older women. Oh, okay. But when I read that, I mean, the fact that they admitted it, I went to the San Francisco Writers Conference years ago in 2017, and I was talking to an editor at a publishing house, you know, one of the major ones like Penguin or something, and she was in her late 20s, and she admitted it too. She's like, oh God, it's so ageist. And she said, I have so much to learn in the industry, and I have so much to learn from my authors, so I welcome it. She said, but a lot of young editors don't. And I said, well, good for you for having a growth mindset, because not everyone does. Yeah. So Linda, when did you start writing? Were you retired? Were you working? Were you still raising kids? What was going on?
Oh God, it was way after raising kids. No, and I can't really say I retired. I never had a completely full-time, full work week. I was a fitness professional. I had my own business. I taught classes all week long. So it wasn't like I had a 9 to 5 or a 9 to midnight job kind of thing. But it was nearing my 60th birthday, and I told you I published my first book at 72. When I was nearing my 60th birthday, I just was looking for something new to do. And by chance, I was looking for a photography course. And I just came across a writer's workshop in this adult school, and I thought that would be fun. I mean, I never really thought I was going to write a book, but I always thought how fabulous it would be to be an author. So, okay, let's take the writer's workshop. And I took it, and then I never stopped. So my story is different because, I wasn't raising kids. I wasn't really working a full-time job, but I was still teaching my classes.
Right.
And so I was doing it all.
Yeah, I love that.
Balancing it all.
And you continue to teach your fitness classes.
Yes.
Yes. In fact, as I said, my first book, the protagonist is a fitness trainer.
Yeah, the protagonist is, and I loved that. I loved that.
But I slowed down on teaching the classes when I got more deeply into the writing.
Okay. The writing muse called you, and you slowed down.
Yeah.
Somebody asked a follow-up question. I'll just quickly answer it because we have so many others. Renee asked, when you publish with a small press, do you have to pay them like a hybrid? And the answer is no. So a small press, like Linda said, they may not pay you, but you don't need to pay them if they have a traditional model. If they are a hybrid publisher, you will pay them. Think of it as assisted publishing. They will assist you in the process. I don't like calling it vanity because that's very different. A lot of the hybrid publishers now are vetting their manuscripts. They're good quality. They come out with great books, and they have traditional distribution, meaning they can get the books into bookstores and libraries. And you will have to pay them, but there's nothing wrong with that because that's the hybrid model. So Renee, if you're going to a small press and it's not a hybrid, you should not be paying. And then your question of, is there a list of small presses that particularly don't require an agent? The answer is not really, but a lot of people in WFWA know of them. So go on the Facebook group and say, hey, y'all, which of you submitted to small presses that were unagented? And you'll be able to amass a lot of small presses that allow direct submissions. My best advice is go to their websites and they list submissions, and they will say right on there, you can directly submit to us. So hopefully that helps you with that one.
Lisa, I just want to pop in there for a second though, too, about, I think that the idea of finances is important regardless of which kind of press you're with. So, you know, some of the smaller presses may ask you to pay for certain editing processes. Some of the other ones may ask for various, you know, if you want your book in an audiobook. So there may be other costs associated, but that could be regardless of what kind of press you're with. And that's certainly true in terms of the marketing of your book. So I think anybody who's interested in writing needs to be thinking about, what is my ultimate budget to get this book out and to have it have wings?
Thank you for that addition.
But on that subject, on that subject, I knew zero about marketing when I came out with my first book. I could not have come up with a budget.
Yes.
I mean, my budget to get the book out was zero. I wasn't going to pay to do that. But I did pay for an editor before I even submitted. But there's a lot you can research, which I did not do beforehand.
Yes.
And if I can just give a little plug for the 3 books that are coming out from Launchpad, which Grace is doing, and I wrote a chapter on, that's going to have a lot of this information in there about the marketing and the publishing and all of that.
Thanks, Linda.
But yeah, there's so much to learn beforehand because I knew nothing. And as Barb said it also, you couldn't have even had a budget. We didn't know what we were budgeting for.
Exactly.
I would say nowadays, and somebody's going to want to like reach through their screen and kill me, but nowadays I would say it would be unrealistic to not have a marketing budget as an emerging author. And I also wrote a chapter. I wrote the author branding chapter for Launchpad, which will be coming out next year. So it's the first chapter in the marketing book of the series. So I'm so excited. I had a lot of fun doing that. Yeah. And shout out to my writing partner, who I think I saw on here, who gave me feedback on that. I said to her, you're the target market for this. Do you want to read this and give me revisions? She said, you betcha. she's fantastic.
Oh, Lisa, until I met you, I didn't know I was a brand.
You didn't know you were a brand, right?
You know, I didn't know,
Well, but to put in a plug for you, Linda, you learned so much about marketing and you enjoyed it. All of you do. And the reason is exactly what someone said in the chat earlier. And I'm going to give all 3 of you a plug. Someone said earlier, I find the 3 of you authentic and inspiring, and you're inspiring because of your authenticity. And people resonate with that. You are who you are, and you're talking about your books and your publishing journey in this really beautiful, authentic way. And so let's actually get into that, because someone asked a question I thought was good. They said, did your age at all, either because you had certain barriers or expectations or fears, or did other people treat you a certain way? Did your age affect your marketing? So I thought that was a really good question.
Did your age affect your marketing? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Did your age affect the way you marketed the book? Fears of marketing, fears of technology around marketing, or did age have nothing to do with it?
Let me take a stab at this, because I'm a prime example of this. I am the most, and Grace is going to laugh. She's going to roll on the floor. I am the most I can't even say the word. I am all thumbs when it comes to any type of technology. And not only that, I'm afraid. I am not comfortable. I am comfortable in this venue. I am comfortable talking about what I do. But if it's all by myself and I have to do something, I am stuck because I operate by feeding off of everyone else. It's like, that's how I can feel natural and comfortable and come across authentically, because I feel authentic. I feel comfortable. For example, you all should just check out Bookish Road Trip today, because I had to do this little 5-minute live video on Facebook today. And I was a wreck. I mean, literally yesterday I had like things,
you're the hives.
you know, it was like my face was all blotchy. And so I'm talking to my partner and I'm saying, you know, I got to do this. And so I had this teddy bear with a Santa hat, and she says, I'll just hold it for you, right? So I'm talking, she's sitting next to me outside of the camera with the teddy bear, and all of a sudden the teddy bear is patting my face.
Okay, I love this. So cute.
It was fabulous.
Laughing hysterically while I'm doing this video.
While you're doing it, right.
And it was awesome. So I'm going to put that down to age, although to be God's honest truth, I could have been 25 years old and I would still be uncomfortable trying to present myself all by myself. And Grace has had to talk me through, I can't tell you how many things about how to sign into something, really. But
Yeah.
I've come a long way, haven't I, Grace?
We've all come a long way. And I think that's what the important message here is too.
Yeah.
My mistake was, honest to goodness, when I launched in June of 2020, I did not think social media was important. I didn't think Facebook was important. I thought everybody who was on Facebook was stupid. I just didn't get it at all. Now I have such incredible friends, particularly in Linda and Barbara. But all the things that we had to learn to do this, there was certainly some reticence. Like, first of all, why should we have to do it? Because our books should all be on Netflix and bestsellers, and Barbara's, of course, was a bestseller. But, you know, there was some resentment of why should we have to do it at all? Now I value so much of it in the friendships I made. And I noticed that Carol Vandenhende was on earlier. I'm not sure if she's still on, but she and I just had the most interesting conversation this week on branding, Lisa. And we were just talking about how I'm still learning that in everything I write, and, you know, in the talks that we talk about, Linda and I talk about, we are not done. So for me, my brand is very much about leaving your mark on the world. And then, oh, look, there are handprints that symbolize leaving your mark on the world.
I love that.
And I didn't actually, even though I've been doing this for 2 years, it wasn't until I talked to Carol Vandenhende the other day that I went, oh, a further fine tuning of this. So I think every single one of us here, and certainly everybody in the chat, is learning every single day. And Linda and I go back and forth on the technology pieces as well. Linda?
Yeah. I didn't know why I was doing social media at all. And now I don't, especially because we all published during the pandemic, our first books. If it wasn't for social media, I don't think we would be where we are today.
That's so true.
So,
So true.
but on that, with age, TikTok drives me nuts. I will never touch it. And I mean, forget it. And I will admit that my grandson had to get me onto Instagram. But you know,
but now you're rocking it.
So now I rock.
Yeah,
I'm
doesn't
fine
matter.
with it. I'm fine with it.
And we don't need to get into actual branding and marketing now, but what you just said is really powerful, Linda, which is you pick and choose how you market, where you market, based on both your target market of your readers and your comfort level and your expertise. And so, and that matches where the magic is. So,
But with the marketing, because we were talking about costs with publishers or whatever, I think now, and especially through WFWA, people who have not published yet, there's a wealth of information they can get from all of us who stumbled upon it. And there are ways, and there are things you will pay for. And even if you're with the big houses, there is some of stuff you will be paying for, and you'll be doing it on your own.
I'm actually glad you brought that up, and not because we don't want to be like gloom and doom Debbie Downers, but I think it's just a good reality check in terms of expectations that all authors now in some way are contributing to their marketing, even with the traditional presses, you know.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Somebody asked, what advice or experience do you have for those of you that did query literary agents? Did you get any sense of how they perceive a debut author who's older, who's an older writer? And I don't know if any of you would actually answer that, because you made a conscious choice based on your, and I'm not going to say just your age, but based on your publishing goals, that you wanted to get out there quicker, and therefore you decided not to query. But I'm not sure. Is that true, Grace?
No, I definitely queried, and I assumed that everybody would, like, who wouldn't have wanted my book? I think the big surprise, oh, stop laughing, you too. But the other part of it is, I think that I did not understand, and this is, I would bet the three of us would weigh in on this. I do not understand to this day the idea of ghosting someone or not responding. You know, we were just raised that, you know, even if the thing was no thank you, you would just say, oh, Grace, thanks so much, your book sucks. I never expected the, you know, you're never going to hear that. And that's, I think, something that is different at our ages. I think we expect people to respond. We don't expect to be ghosted. We expect people to be polite. And I'm not saying that younger people are not polite. I just think that we actually have a different culture of communication.
Yeah. And also, like you said, it depends on the person. Some agents are really great about trying to respond, even if it's a quick form rejection. And some agents, you know, as you can see on Query Tracker, don't respond at all. But yeah, from a common courtesy standpoint, it is a strange industry, because it is not only tolerated, but expected that people won't respond. So it is very different than other industries where, like you said, can you imagine even just emailing a colleague and them not getting back to you? So it is weird. One other thing that someone asked is they're clarifying, basically, because Barbara said that she had an agent after the fact, and the difference is what Barbara, just to clarify, Barbara didn't query that agent came to Barbara. So that's why she was saying earlier how lucky she felt. But to be fair, she wrote a damn good book and got a lot of attention for it. And then Carolyn asked, Carolyn said, wow, I didn't realize that you could pitch publishers directly in the United States, because Carolyn's from, I think, either I don't know if you're in Canada or if you're down under in Australia. And the answer is yes, there are some small publishers, quite a bit. You know, offhand, I could think of maybe, 15, 20 that you can directly pitch without an agent. So yeah, they're out there. Someone else said, if you had an editor beforehand, what type of editor? And if not, did the small press ask you to go through an editing process before you signed with them or after? And I know all of you have experience with that. So did you hire an editor before? And if so, what type? Was it developmental? Was it copy editing? And if you didn't hire an editor, then was that part of your publishing contract? So Barbara, I know that you had some, editing is part of your contract with Redadept. Did you hire a developmental editor beforehand?
No, I did not. Although I will tell you that when I am done with this manuscript, once I've sent it to a couple of my critique partners, and once I feel that it's as good as I can get it, I will ask my agent whether she thinks I should send it to a professional editor before she starts submitting it places. And I will trust what she says. Because Linda said she did have an editor. It never dawned on me. I'm telling you, I was the virgin of, I knew nothing. So it never dawned on me to have it professionally edited beforehand. But the reason I went with Red Adept is, first of all, I knew several authors in WFWA who had gone with them and I'd had a good experience. And they had said that they felt their editorial staff was particularly good. And I also will say the same thing. I think their editing services are really good. They do professional editing for other than their own authors. They have a separate business that is professional editing. But then if they do that, they won't publish that book. So I didn't pay anything for the editing that they did for my book. And let me tell you, on the first book, it was literally, I had to rewrite half of the book, and I had a two-person point of view. My editor said, no, it has to be one-person point of view. This entire character has to go. My life just passed right before my eyes. I thought, there's no way I can do this. But she was the one who convinced me to take a lot of what I had given the second person and rewrite that into my second book.
And what a second book it was.
So, even though she wanted me to do a sequel to Nowhere Near Goodbye rather than a prequel, because everybody wanted to know what happened to Tim and Emma. Well, Tim and Emma, nothing happened to them. That's why there was no more book. But there was a lot of story to tell beforehand. So I will consult with Liza to see what she thinks, because I mean, she's been a professional for a long time, and I think she will tell me exactly. And I'm expecting what she will. Well, I think she will say one of two things: either an immediate yes, or let me read it first.
Yeah, I think so too.
That I'll tell you. So I don't know, but that's my plan, is to ask her what she thinks I should do.
And let's contrast that with Linda, because Linda, you did hire a developmental editor for your book, correct? Before.
Yes, but you have to understand, I started writing this book when I knew zero about writing.
Okay.
So I did use I hired a developmental editor for that. And then I wrote the book. Where'd Lisa go?
I'm here. My light dropped, and I don't want you to be staring at my boobs. So,
What did she say?
Her light dropped, and she doesn't want us staring at her boobs.
I have to fix it, but you're going to be staring at my chest the whole time. So I did,
Okay,
I did
all
the
right.
polite thing. Sorry.
It's women's fiction. It's okay.
That's hysterical.
Anything goes here.
But okay, so after that, I wrote the novel and then rewrote the novel and rewrote the novel. Okay. And it really had to do with insecurity. Not that I knew anything needed to be done. So I had been doing something through Inks and Insights, whatever, and that's how I got to the editor. And I was very happy. She did a content edit for me. And then I did some rewriting, and then she did a copy edit, and then, the proof and the whole business, so that when I submitted, it was really done. Now, I went with Black Rose Writing, who does not offer at this moment editing services. So even for my second book, I mean, my book was really done. I had done beta readers, the whole business, but I still did a copy edit with that editor, because she's the one who's going to pick up on all these things that needed to be done, and toss this part out, and that one you don't need it. And, you named her so-and-so in chapter 2, but she has another name in chapter 7. What happened to you?
Continuity.
Yeah.
I actually love this already, and we're going to hear from Grace also, but like two totally different experiences. So like Linda, you started with the editor before you submitted, and then when you did find this wonderful publisher, they were a match, but they didn't offer editing, so you stuck with someone that was tried and true from your first book. And then we have Barbara, who didn't do editing in advance, although I know, Barbara, that you did beta readers and critique partners, and then you did have kind of deep level editing with Red Adept to the point where you had a rewrite. So now, Grace, you're going to be the tiebreaker. What was your experience?
Yeah.
In my educational books, there both the publisher offered and required massive editing, which was both hard and super helpful. With my novel, I assumed it was perfect right out the bat. It was so far from perfect, but I used beta readers extensively, and they actually, that's the great story of this quilt behind me. There's a scene in my book where the characters leave their mark on a wall in a barn by leaving their hand in paint. And my beta readers each took a quote from the book and dipped their hand in paint and made a quilt. And the night they tore apart my book, it's the best beta reader story I've ever heard. So I'd love to hear a better one. But they each dipped their hand in paint, wrote a quote from the book. They wrapped me in this beautiful quilt, which has books all on the other side. And they said, now we're going to tear apart your book. And it was the most helpful thing for me, because as authors, we are so clear in our minds that what's in our minds comes out of our fingers and is clear upon the page. Well, they were saying, well, tell me what happens to Sonia in the last chapter. I was like, I don't know. They were like, no, it's really important that we know what happens to Sonia, or what happens to this character that you mentioned in chapter 1. I was like, yeah, that was that. And they made the book so much better. And Linda is really the queen, I think, of knowing how to use editors. And there's always going to be something. I love that it is the best story.
It is a beautiful story. Yeah.
But I also think, for example, I have a family member who right on the first page of the book has never read past the first page, because my main character tosses her keys into a basket where they meet with an oleo of other objects. Well, I spelled it oleo like the butter, as opposed to oleo like an array of things. And it was never caught by any of the editors. It was never caught by my beta readers. And my family member said, well, I can't possibly read the rest of this book. It's probably filled with bad edits.
Oh. Wow.
So editor is really important, and I do think Linda is the queen of knowing how to use them.
Let's just stick with the editor for one more minute, and then there's a lot of really, really good questions. So someone said, I thought that agents hire the editors in traditional publishing. So no, actually, in traditional publishing, if your contract comes with editing, the publishing house hires the editor. But there are some agents that will work with editors also. And so Renee, I think it really just depends on your agent, your contract, but like Linda knew in her contract that it didn't include editing, and that would be something she'd be responsible for. So Renee, if you submit to a small press, the answer is look at your contract really carefully. Now, having said that, like Barbara said, some agents are editorial agents. Mm-hmm. And if you want an editorial agent, if that's important to you, like I personally would love an editorial agent. I put that in my query letter. Like when I research the agent, if I know they're a hands-on agent, I let them know that in my query letter, like that I am attracted to you because of this, this, and this, and because you're an editorial agent. And that way they know that I'm not afraid to get in there and work. So just a thought. Any other thoughts about that, the three of you?
I would just say that we all are in love with our books when we're writing them. Somebody else who really knows the business, as Grace was pointing out, what about this character? What happened to that character? What was she thinking? There are things that we are not aware of that an editor picks up. And yes, not all small presses do have an agent, have editors. I think it is worth every penny to do it, to make your book the best it can be.
I agree.
Yeah. And Portia asked, what are some legitimate sources of reliable, good editors? I'm going to always send you to our online communities. You can go to the WFWA Facebook group and ask, and you will get people that have already used an editor that love them. There is someone in WFWA who is an editor, Tiffany Yates Martin, who was our masterclass presenter last year in Albuquerque, I believe. And Tiffany keeps a list of other editors that she sort of approves of. And what I love about that is she gets very busy and she'll often be booked, 6 months out. Catherine Kraft does the same thing. She keeps a list of vetted editors. So my advice is ask on WFWA, because not only will authors answer you, but editors will answer you. And when an editor recommends another editor, that's a really good sign. Any other ways to legitimate sources of reliable, good editors that the three of you would recommend?
I
Well,
think
I
just
found
going to
my first-
WFWA is always the right answer.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if they even exist anymore, but I found my editor through a contest with Inks and Insights.
Oh, that's cool.
So, and that was something that was vetted.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely Catherine or Tiffany would be the top of my list.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's so many good ones. The only reason I thought of them is they're both WFWA, and they both were speakers. But Catherine has done a webinar for us, so is Tiffany. But I don't want to just call out them because there are so many great editors in WFWA, and they're very different. So there are some that are developmental editors that will look at holistic and structure. There are some that are more book coaches. There's fantastic ones. I'm going to be leaving out a ton, and for all of you watching this that are editors in WFWA, I apologize. But the answer is go to WFWA and ask for recommendations and tell people what you need. Say, I'm looking for someone that can do this, and that way you get a really good editor. Pardon me, a really good match. If any of you feel comfortable, Renee is asking what would be a reasonable fee for editors to charge? And let's just split it up because there's developmental editing and then there's copy editing and proofreading, and those prices are really different. I can give a range, but Linda, do you want to give a range?
I really would hesitate too, because it not only is that there's a range, it all depends on the editor. So many are, it's such a variety. Yeah. But what I would say, you should be able to have a conversation without paying the editor at the beginning. And what I was very fortunate with, we had a conversation on the phone and discussed what I needed. And after that, she told me what she felt I needed. And it wasn't like a sale. It was, you don't need developmental, you need this, you know, that kind of thing. Because I don't know the first thing about editing.
Yeah.
Or didn't.
I love that recommendation, that to talk to someone, email them and find out, and someone just put in the chat that also find out if they're a good match for your time
Absolutely.
period, your genre. Two people put their prices in. They said, one person said, I paid $2,000 for developmental and copy editing. Another person said that a developmental edit she paid for was $2,400. Copy edit was less. And, you know, I was looking at developmental editing last year, and the prices were anywhere from like $1,000 for a manuscript evaluation to $4,000. So again, there's a range, whereas copy editing, often they charge either per word or per page. And it is usually a lot less for copy editing, but I'll be honest that my copy editor for my published book in 2011 was golden. And she was provided by my, no, that's not true. She was paid for by my publisher, but I was able to pick her, like Linda said, which I really liked.
There's another aspect to that also, and I know it varies upon editor. When you do have the conversation with the editor, you want to find out if every conversation you're going to have, are they going to charge you, or is this a flat fee?
Good point. Yeah, good point. I have a quick question before we dive back into some of the attendee questions. Did you ever feel like you experienced either blatant ageism or implicit ageism? And if so, where was that implicit or explicit ageism within the writing or publishing journey for you?
I never felt it.
I didn't either. I have never felt that age has either worked for or against me. I mean, I really don't.
Okay, so it was more of an internal guide for your decision making as opposed to an external block. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
But you know, I also have to be honest. The three of us are probably, I was trying to think about this before we came on. I don't know that we know people older than us that we're working with. You know, so we range from 69 to 70 in Linda's case.
You could say it.
But what's interesting to me, though, is I have to say, I have to call myself out, just like anybody else has to call themselves out. You know, I think Bookish Road Trip now has 12 or 14 people who are part of our group.
Oh, I'm the
And
grandma.
and we have a range of people, and I have to call myself out sometimes going, like, what do you mean they're still working? How come they're like not here to do this? And I think that so ageism goes both ways.
Both ways, yeah.
It does. Barbara said something earlier, and I totally agree with her because I always agree with Barbara. But also I think as we age, we think we have I think for myself, I have more stories, deeper stories, more understanding of more people, more respect for more people, less judgment, more acceptance of myself. I think that's just the gift of aging. But that doesn't mean that I just don't sit there and go, oh my God, she's 22 and she wrote a novel. And part of that is telling me like I'm jealous because I didn't write that novel at 22. But I don't want us to get off the hook that, we also don't have to, we sometimes make judgments we should not either.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because implicit bias about ageism goes both ways, and it can be an older writer saying, well, that young whippersnapper, what do they know? How good could this book be? And then you read it, you're like, oh, damn, it's good. Right? So you're right. We have to be very careful. And we also have to be very careful not to make an assumption that people within the publishing industry who are younger are inexperienced, because many of them are. So I like how you're calling yourself out, Grace, because I think everyone has some implicit bias in them based on ageism, and we just have to check that. Just like we don't want people to treat us a certain way. What I love is you said that. So Grace, you said it so gracefully about how you have more wisdom and more stories and more confidence. And I would say you give less. Somebody said, like, as I get older, I just didn't care as much what other people thought, in a good way. And I try not to use profanity. So I think there's a freedom that comes in some ways with aging, where not only do you accept yourself more, but you don't get as stressed about other things also. It's great.
Okay, so something we were talking about before we went live, dealing with this ageism, was when I brought up another author who will remain nameless, who is with one of the big houses and has been publishing many years, lots of books, who feels the ageism in a different way. She's also in her early 70s now and started publishing years ago but only in her 50s, I would say. But she's finding that the people she works with are so much younger, that her experiences and what she brings to her writing can follow into her marketing, but she has to teach those who are her team.
Wow.
So her team is younger than she is, and she's been doing it a lot longer than them. So she has to guide the team.
So here's also what I love about that in terms of managing expectations, that again, we might walk in with a stereotype that if this agent is in her 70s and her team are in their like 20s to 50s, of course they're going to know more about marketing and technology. And she's like, let me show you people some things. So yeah. So and I think Elizabeth just wrote it in the chat that, the takeaway is we shouldn't make judgments at any age about any talent. And let's just first find out what someone's expertise and competence is before making that.
Right.
I am curious, how did publishing change your life at your age or at any age? Right? Did it change your life in any way to be published as a novelist? And if so, how?
My life blossomed. Grace loves to hear me use that word, but my life blossomed. I've had a great life. Thankfully, I'm very lucky. I've had a wonderful life. But when I look around and I see women my age who've retired from whatever they did, and there's nothing wrong with with this, but many of them are simply playing cards or, retirement stuff. And I have made a whole new community of intelligent, creative people who help me broaden my mind, open my world. And I see the difference from people my age who are not continuing on and doing something else. So yeah, my life has blossomed.
Awesome. I love that. It's blossomed. Yeah. Barbara, anyone?
Exactly what Linda said. It is so true. I can't imagine not waking up each day and feeling like something good seems to happen almost every day. I mean, don't get me wrong, bad things happen to me, but it's like something good happens all the time, even if it's like connecting with Grace and Linda, having a couple of jokes, you know, good morning, you know, Grace texts me in the morning and say, morning, love, you know, like we're like right next door to each other. I can't imagine not having met all the people that I've met. I can't imagine not feeling the excitement I feel when I am like really into my writing and things are just flowing. Don't get me wrong, I can totally imagine what it's like when I'm staring at the screen and I got nothing, because that happens. But you know what? The longer you sit there and the longer you think about it, something does happen. It does happen. I can't imagine giving up or not ever having started. It is the best thing that has ever happened to me by far.
Awesome. Grace?
Oh, head exploding. And we in Bookish Road Trip, we talk about that a lot, like our heads explode, because we run Bookish Road Trip like a business. But there's so many things here that I think are important. When I wrote my book, it was really because I thought I was done. You know, one of the main characters thinks she's done, an older character thinks she's done. And the whole purpose of my book is we are not done. We continue to leave our mark on the world. And there's a comment about, you know, what happens when you realize your days are shorter than they are longer. I think that, you know, regardless of whatever age we have, only today is promised, you know, not even today, only this afternoon, only this evening is promised, you know, only while I'm still breathing is it promised. So I think that if you had said to me 2 years ago, I wrote my book, so I'm done. But wait a minute, now I'm doing all this other stuff and I'm done. Well, you know, and I never want this to sound like I'm bragging, but, you know, I have 2 different radio shows. We've got 3 books coming out. Look at the people in the chat who are talking about writing. Look at Linda and Barbara, who, you know, are constantly writing amazing novels. I never would have thought those things would happen. And I actually wrote an article for Barbara Boss, Women Writers, Women's Books. And it was a 2-part series on changing your life, one podcast at a time, one book at a time. And that has just become all of our mantra. And I see Linda and Barbara shaking their heads. Nor would I have imagined Mary Helen Sheriff and I, who's 45-ish, who's the CEO and one of the founders of Bookish Road Trip. She and I are collaborating on this 3-book series. And I just went to her and I said, Mary, I have this idea. And she went, great, let's do it. So I never would have thought that at 69, I would be going to somebody 45 and saying, let's partner on this. So we are never done. I understand that idea of staring at the screen or not knowing how to get your book out. But I think we all just have to believe we're not done. We have to leave our mark on the world.
Awesome. And actually, if we could do a quick round robin, because this was a great question also. T asked, I'm so inspired by all 4 of you. Your stories for how long it takes to complete your book, then publish it, shows stamina. Thank you for your honesty. What was your most helpful resource to stay the course until you held your debut in your hand? Most helpful resource.
Other writers.
Yeah,
Writer
definitely.
friends, without a doubt. I just read something about how to stay the course, and how to stay the course is to connect with other writers who basically are at your level and a little bit better, and you watch these people as they progress, and it gives you the confidence to keep going, and they give you the confidence to keep going, and you just never give up.
Awesome.
You just never, I've never once stared at that screen for so long and been so discouraged and thought, I can't do this anymore. I've never thought that. because I know it'll get better, but other authors are what pull you along. There is no doubt in my mind. Again, I attribute that to WFWA. It is the best. I just paid my dues today for the and it is the best $48 I ever spent a year.
Yeah, I know. It's still astounding to me how affordable it is and how much you get.
I know.
They might raise it if we talk about
No. And it is such a great community. But I love your answer.
With that $48.
But you just said the word community.
Yeah.
Because I know I always heard, writing is so solitary and yes, it is. You're alone with your computer or your pen and paper, whatever. But if you make that community, I've never felt alone. Even when I'm deep into it, first of all, I've got my characters with me, but anytime I need to, I can reach out to somebody who's in the same position I'm in.
Exactly.
Good. Grace, what would you say has been your single biggest resource to going through the journey and then holding your book in your hand?
I would have to start by saying my husband, because he read everything. He read it out loud to me at night. So I knew so little, but the thing that makes the difference now is absolutely what Linda and Barbara said. It's the community. It is so uplifting. We all know Julie Cantrell, USA Today and New York Times bestseller. And she wrote her first book in a closet in the middle of the night because she didn't want anybody to know she was writing. And, probably Julie's incredibly busy now, but I bet anybody could probably direct message her and Julie would get back to you. The community, Barbara and Linda said it best. Fabulous.
Yeah. It sounds like all three of you agree in the community, but I also love, Grace, how you added on your husband and recognize the fact that he was a reader for you, because not everyone has a family member, a partner who actually is one of their readers. So that's a lovely addition also. Yeah, someone else just said that in the chat. Yeah.
But Lisa, one of the first things I ever learned when I took a writing course, it was a writer's workshop, and the instructor said, never go to a family member or friend to read your work. They're going to tell you it's wonderful, and they don't know the first thing about writing.
It really depends on the person, right?
Really well, yes, and your husband is a screenwriter also. So
well, I was going to say, actually, Sharon Kurtzman, and I know she won't mind me saying this because she talks about it a lot. Sharon Kurtzman's husband is her main alpha reader. And he's really good at it. So yeah. I agree with you. Like, I wouldn't hand my book to certain family members because they'd either go, "What's this crap?" or they'd go, "Oh my God, you're the best thing ever." But right, yeah, a discerning reader, and it sounds like
you have to know who it's going to be. Don't just hand it to your spouse because it's your spouse.
Because it's your spouse, right? And also, not all spouses read. I'll be honest.
That's
like, my husband was a big nonfiction reader. So I also said to him, "Do you really want to read this? Because it's fiction." And I got him to read fiction in the last few years since the pandemic. He's totally into fiction now, and we get to talk books together. So it's great. Yeah. Someone said Sue Grafton's husband always reads her books first. Richard Russo, oh, I love him. His wife, yeah. So I think, Linda, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think it depends. That's my lawyer.
It depends. Yeah.
I think it depends. I think I've never let any family member read my work until it's published, and I buy them the book or give them the book. But and
Barbara, you and I have talked about this, and I don't want to get too into this because I know it can get personal, but you and I have also talked about this because we have some themes and stories in our book that family members may take issue with, because we've loosely based some of the book on truth. Yeah. So that's also a different issue for us.
Yeah. But I do think depending on the family member, I don't think there's a problem. I don't think it's a black or white situation.
Yeah.
I think there are family or people who are close to you who are able to separate themselves from the writer and just read the book. I think it's real. It's just not black or white. I think it just depends.
I think that's a great answer.
Yep.
And Barbara, let me just stick with you for a minute because there was a good question. Chris asked, I'm curious about how your book became a USA Today bestseller. Do you attribute that to a form of social media, some form of special publicity marketing, or something else?
You know what? If I had $1 for every question, every time I've been asked that question, I don't know what I attribute it to. I literally, the day that happened, I attributed it to a miracle. Because it was never something that I ever thought about at all. And then when my editor called me and said, so you're really close to hitting USA Today, because USA Today, I think, could be the only big list that is entirely about the numbers. And it's like,
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
like the numbers between one Wednesday and the next Wednesday. It goes from Wednesday to Wednesday. And it's all about the numbers, but then it's also about who else is publishing a book and selling it during that time. I have a really sad story to tell you about somebody who hit all the numbers and lost out because it was at Easter time and 16 bunny books were published that week that sold enormous amounts of books.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like playing, craps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. And it may never happen to me again. And it's kind of like, I don't know. I was really blessed.
Yeah. Last question or two. How do you continually write? So your actual craft of writing, making the time to write, and then how do you stay engaged in the writer-author community? I think I know the answer to the second one, which is through Bookish Road Trip and through WFWA and through all the other organizations, but you might want to add something there. So any tips for everyone on how you continually write and how you stay engaged? And for those that are jumping off and saying you want to reach them, I did mention all of their websites up front. It's linda-rosen.com, gracesammon.net, and barbaraconrayauthor.com. Correct, Barbara?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. So if you go to those 3 websites, you can connect with them, but also just go to WFWA and just pop on there. Loved your webinar. Grace, Linda, and Barbara, tag them and have a conversation there. They're always available.
DM us through Facebook. Just message.
Yeah, they're all on Facebook. They're all very active. So feel free. But I apologize. My question was, how do you continually write? And then how do you stay engaged in the writer and author community?
I honestly have a schedule.
Okay.
I will engage, and I think Grace has pretty much figured out my schedule. I engage a little bit first thing in the morning before I start writing, and then I engage late in the afternoon, and I try not to during my writing time. Not that it doesn't happen, but I try not to. That's what I do.
And your writing time is a designated amount of what I call a time block?
Yes.
Yes. So you have a button chair, time versus a community connection time.
I have my chair and I am my desk, and I am there between 7 and 7:15 every morning. I generally start writing by 8 o'clock because first I go through the emails and then I get on social media and I do all of that. And then I try not to do it again until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay. Yeah. So what I like is you bookend it. You start your day with community and inspiration, and then you end your day with it. Yeah. Very nice. Very nice. Linda, how do you continually write, and how do you
I feel like the naughty girl here whenever Barb talks, because
no, but give us the honest answer.
I honestly do not have a schedule. I engage in life very much. So I might be out playing pickleball in the morning and then come home and check in on Facebook or emails and then sit down and write or research or whatever. Then I may go out to ceramics, or I might go to the pool, or something. I engage. I don't sit down in the chair for hour after hour until I'm deep into a book, and then I really need my hours. But I can't do what Barb does, or a lot of other writers. I mean, after 3 hours, I'm fried.
Okay.
I'm done. So my life is very haphazard with when I don't have a schedule.
But that's okay because
Very special person.
right.
It works for me.
It
It
works.
works for me. Book 3 is coming out and book 4 is playing in my head.
Exactly.
works.
Exactly.
It works for you for sure. Yeah. And Grace, how about you? How do you continually write and stay engaged with all of the radio shows and the Facebook groups and your writing?
I want to be both of them. I want to have the balance that Linda has to still go out and have fun. It was funny today, for those of you who are watching now or later, we needed to do some correspondence around today, and Linda was like missing in action for like 3 hours. And I'm thinking, well, she's either playing pickleball or she's at ceramics, and I was so jealous of her. And I'm jealous of Barbara for that discipline. I would say that I'm at my computer by 7:15 most days. I do play tennis twice a week, and I walk twice a week. But on those days that I'm not doing that, I'm at my computer by 7:15. I do try to at least get up and walk around a little bit now because I'm old and need to do that. I'm constantly writing. But right now it's much more editing for the 3 Launchpad books and planning for those. And I really, I need to do something closer what Barbara says, where I just say, you know, even if it's 3 hours a week, this is the time for my novel. And I have not gotten good at that. And I don't know that unless I do that, I'll ever get the novel that is playing in my head out.
I'll chime in here because for those of you that are still working, so and we talked about this a little earlier. So I work really hard, I play really hard, I write really hard, I exercise. These ladies know that I don't really do anything sort of, you know, half-assed or anything. So I'm running a thriving business for the past 20 years and I love it. And so I've actually talked to my writing partner about this because some people are like, well, you own your own business, just cut back and just don't have as many clients and as many speaking engagements. But I really love what I do. And I also feel like I'm doing something important working with people and organizations to change the world, right? So unlike what Linda said, I do marathon writing sessions. And Linda and I have talked about this many times. We're in a writers group together. When I finally am not, let's say, having a booked up week for my business with coaching and speaking, I will then write sometimes for like 3 days straight, 8 to 12 hours a day. And I like to do that because when I'm doing deep level revisions, I need to be immersed in the world of my book, or I'll go away to a writer retreat like I did this summer and write for 4 days straight. And I, again, will put in like 13 hours of writing. So I think that I'm maybe in the minority. If any of you, you know, do that, if you do marathon writing sessions, then it's not good or bad, it's just different. What's interesting though, is when I was writing my novel from the first time, like when I was getting it down, I could write in 15-minute sprints. So I would think of something and be like, ooh, 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 and I could be between clients and I would just like pop it on my iPhone. But when I'm doing revisions, I need to do deep level work for days on end and hours on end. And so I think we all struggle with, many people struggle with life-work balance. Many people struggle with life-writing balance. I'm struggling with life, work, writing, volunteer, play balance. My problem, my mom used to tease, God bless her, she used to tease, Lisa, you need 9 lives because you want to do it all. So you know what? That's why it's taken 6 years. But it is what it is, and the book will come out when it comes out, and that's that, you know. Any of you have any last minute questions for our wonderful, wonderful presenters here? So you are getting a ton of thank yous, and everyone is saying,
the comments are so nice.
Oh,
I do want to add one thing, because my life, I mean, it sounds like I'm so haphazard with my writing. I do make a date with myself. And I think that's something that everybody should do, whether it's get button chair at 7:15 or whenever, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you make a date with yourself and then you're going to write. You're going to get it done.
I want to give some quick resources. I mentioned the Barbara Campbell article earlier. She's 80 years old, she's furious, and she just published her first book, and it's on slate.com. there is a great quote by the poet Sharon Olds that I love, and it's anyone who blooms at all ever is very lucky. And what I'm laughing is Barbara used the term lucky tonight, and Linda used the term bloom. So it's like you just picked that quote, which I thought was awesome. Roxane Gay has one of the best articles on writing at any age that I've ever read. It's basically, if you look it up, it's Roxane Gay, G-A-Y, and it's published in the New York Times, and it's something like It's Never Too Late. And it is a phenomenal article, and it came out many years ago. If I had to guess, maybe 2016, 2017. She's the author of many books, including Hunger. And I'm going to end, and she doesn't know I'm doing this, I'm going to end with a quote by Barbara Conrey, which I found so powerful and really apropos for what we're talking about tonight. And Barbara wrote, here, she's probably gonna like laugh or cry, because I'm embarrassing her. So
I have no idea what's coming.
did not know. So writing is like breathing, or eating a delicious meal, or snuggling with a beloved pet. It's all right. Now I'm going to get emotional. It's necessary. It fills us up. It gives us hope. Some of us discover the power of writing at an early age. Others learn later that life's most pivotal moments are best understood by puzzling them through on the page. Whether young or old, what matters is that we dare to give ourselves the time and space to write our way to clarity, to meaning, to wholeness. And once we do, we must help others who find themselves with this very same need. Whew.
That's beautiful.
That's
Thank
you. You're welcome. Thank you for those words. When I saw that, I'm like, oh, I have got to grab that, because that is a great way to end this this webinar. So thank you to all three of you. Mille grazie. This has been such a wonderfully inspiring webinar for all of us. I've learned so much from all of you, and I think you're going to motivate and inspire a lot of people to write at any age. And as Grace said, we are not done.
We say that all the time.
Yep.
Good.
We need t-shirts.
You need
Lisa.
t-shirts, right?
Yes,
I
we
love
do.
it. Yeah. And there have been some of the comments on here are incredible. Things like, someone said earlier something about they love the word bloom. There have been some like, we're rising up. So I actually love these chats. I'm going to save the chat. Hold on. Often I save the chat and put it with the webinar, because it's really wonderful for people to see it. So I just did that and I'll make sure that I grab it. So thank you to the three of you. Thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. Have a wonderful holiday season, and we will see you in 2023. So
Thank you.
take care.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.